All right, everybody, great to see you on this blustery spring day here at Dwell Church. My name is Matt Stefan. As I said, I'm part of the leadership team here at Dwell, and I'm quite happy to see all of your beautiful faces. I was explaining to someone yesterday that we've had a bunch of milestones racked up recently, but man, this is a 2-year-old church plant. We're founded on 5 core values. We want to be Jesus-centered, research-based, trauma-informed, diverse, and affirming and inclusive. In my head, I keep a little tally of how many times I've gotten it right. So I've never messed it up so far, but someday I will. Someday I will. If you're new here, we would love to connect with you and hear your story. And turn on this little guy right here. Let's get it. Okay. Oh, wrong way. Here we go. If you'd like to connect with us, we would for sure love to connect with you. You can tap your phone on the little device that says tap your phone here. That'll get you on our email list. And part of the cycle of getting to know Dwell Church is at least I would love to take you out for a cup of coffee or equivalent. But more than anything, we'd love to help you find your place in the world. We are on a mission to build a church where people can take one step towards Jesus. We're on a quest to do that. We've been put on the planet for a specific reason, is to help people dwell in the presence of Jesus. I hope if you're just here for one Sunday, for these 40 or so minutes, that's what you feel. Invitation to take one step towards Jesus. Grateful that we're doing it together. One thing I want to talk about is our Dwell South Bay initiative. Now, we've been trying to explain this through emails. And I wasn't sure the right amount to talk about it because they're actually just very small prayer meetings in people's rooms. We're just discerning. We're at the very beginning of a process. And the first thing I did was show them the picture of some of y'all in my living room in 2023 when we were doing the same thing. Just wondering, just asking together, what might we be called to that 10,000 other living rooms are not called to? And since we've been trying to explain it in the emails a bit, people have been asking, what the heck is that? And it's been my experience that when we talk in church, the person in my seat says, hey, let's do a big initiative. That when I was on the receiving end of that news, I always felt like, what? Oh, my God, what's happening? So if that was your response, that's okay. This is going to be something we could talk about in every kind of way, but I wanted to spend some time today explaining exactly what we're talking about, exactly how the model will work, and exactly how it will impact this. And the goal is for it to impact this as little as possible. That's the headline here. We're trying to design this in a way where other people can step into a church like Dwell without disrupting the relationships that we have built here. So those relationships that we're building and have built, that's one of the determining factors through which we're navigating all of this. But there's some higher level thinking with like some charts and stuff. So here we go. There is an old version of a church saying, let's start a new location. That looks like this. We take the thing that was big and we turn it into 2 small things. We take some of our friends and we send them across town, never to be seen or heard from again. This is not that. Our one goal is to not have it feel like that. So there's a lot of thinking around what they call microsites. This is a microsite. We're a relatively small church in the grand scheme of things, right? And so we're trying to work with this microsite model, which instead looks like this. Imagine instead of a blob that is going to divide like a cell into 2, that Dwell Church as it currently is a thin black line moving through time that began at a certain point. February 2024 is when this party began. And we're praying and discerning if it might be the case that God's calling a parallel line into existence somewhere else. Under the core values, a different leadership team, building something that they have discerned that they could say an enthusiastic yes to. So we're just gathering 10 or 12 people in living rooms to say, is there something that God is calling them to? Now, the spectrum for answering that as an affirmative of saying yes to that is actually rather wide. They might say that we need to build another one of these, and that would be amazing. More people would get to be included and take a step closer to Jesus in an inclusive church. Or they might say, yeah, it's more like a big life group, and they'll come to this Dwell 10, 15 times a year together. That will be lovely. They will have all kinds of community in their life, and they'll be following Jesus together. Or maybe they will remain as they are and say, well, if Dwell was 10 minutes closer, it would be our church. We'll make it when we can. That would be okay too. So the big picture of what we're doing is getting those people together who are saying, if Dwell was 10 minutes closer, that would be our church. And we're having them pray. Is there something here that God might be calling them to? The answer might be no, but the answer really might be something, yes. Above all, though, I hope that we feel like it is not disruptive to what we have going here. That's one of the goals, as I said. But why are we doing this? I think there's a couple of good reasons that we're thinking about. The first is it's sort of our intuition that Dwell needs to be bigger. It needs to be robust enough that if something goes wrong, we can navigate it. And currently, Dwell is amazing, but we've had a lot of good luck. We've had a lot of serendipity. We've had a lot of Jesus summoning us into this room so that nothing so far has gone wrong. But someday we will make a mistake or face a crisis or something will go wrong. And if we had more organizational robustness, it would be easier for us to successfully navigate that. On the other hand, Dwell, as it currently is, about 100 adults and 40 kids, is a lovely size. So how do we grow to where we are big enough where we can handle a crisis without disrupting the lovely thing that we currently have? That is about 140 people participating each month. And so our intuition is that more circles of 140 is better than one room with 280. That's the baseline sort of math that we're doing. So what I would love for y'all to do, as we're saying, we're not sending any people or resources, but we are sending a lot of time, a lot of heart. And I hope maybe you would pray along with us to see if something might be called into being there. I hope that it is, and I hope that we go on a journey together of building more and more inclusive churches. In my living room in 2023, when we very first started talking about this, one of the first sentences out of my mouth was, if you think there needs to be an inclusive church in our town, then probably you think there needs to be one in every town. And so there is at least one part of the spectrum of possibility is we get to be part of a movement of creating more and more inclusive contemporary churches where people can walk with each other and with Jesus. And that would be pretty amazing. So pray for them. The way we're saying it, the way we like to say it is we're on a mission to help people dwell in the presence of Jesus, and we're on a quest to build a church where anyone could take a step closer to him. So I hope that's what happens. But we're, as we always do, trying to be real prayerful and real participatory about how that comes into being. People have been pulling me aside for weeks and at fieldwork and sending me emails. So let's keep talking about this. We'll keep giving some updates. Currently, as I said, it's just 10, 12 people praying in a room. But it is pretty fun to dream with them. So we'll see. All right. We're also talking about the science of happiness. This comes out of what we do every 6 months, community discernment, where we sit together in groups of 5 to 7, and each table has an assignment. If we could talk about anything we wanted to at Dwell for 4 weeks, each table has to say this is what we would talk about. Some people put on their paper through that process, we need to hear more about purpose in our lives. And the human sciences on a sense of purpose, the psychology of purpose, is intimately, inexorably bound up with the umbrella term, the science of happiness. So that's why we're working on this. As I shared last week, it's also a little bit of a personal journey for me. We all took, if you're receiving the emails or you signed up for things, we're giving all kinds of resources. One is an inventory that determines your happiness profile, custom happiness profile. I'm the kind that it can be maximally happy and maximally unhappy. But there was a time where I was a lot more unhappy than I was happy. And in clinical psychology, I think they call that depression, which I carried for a lot of my 20s and 30s. So I was on a personal, prayerful, spiritual journey to emerge out of the depression that befell a lot of my family members. So a lot of this stuff is quite autobiographical for me. And where we started last week was this idea of shalom. A great book called Not How It's Supposed to Be, written in 1995, which will be somewhat meaningful here in a minute, suggested that a major theme in the Bible, shalom, means universal human flourishing, wholeness, and delight. This is what you were made for. This is God's will for you. As a kid, sometimes people would be like telling me to figure out God's will for me, and I wish someone would have told me, it's not what your college major is. It's to be on a path towards flourishing, wholeness, and delight. That's what God's will for you is. So start discerning that. Start asking God for that. In fact, all of us are designed, this is what we'll talk about today, we are designed to grow towards universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. You were made to grow. Everybody say, I was made to grow. I was made to grow. Yes, that's right. Americans, we can be self-conscious about the different ways we might be growing. Some of them are not always things we're proud of. But growing towards universal wholeness, flourishing, and delight, that is specifically the thing that you were made to do. This is the beating heart of our faith, this type of shalom. And it turns out we don't always talk about following Jesus this way. But here's where the science of happiness intersects quite directly with the Christian faith. The aim, the center of the target is in the presence of Jesus, under his companionship and guidance, arriving at universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. We don't always think of it that way, but in 1995, Cornelius Plantinga said that. In 1945, C.S. Lewis said, "No soul that seriously and consistently desires joy will ever miss it." Wow, that's a challenging one. Those who seek find, and to those who knock, it is opened. Before that, the Westminster Catechism. First Presbyterians, if you went through taking your faith seriously, they would give you the little book, the Westminster Catechism, which was filled with questions and then the right answers. And you were just supposed to memorize the whole thing. Questions after question after question that you had to memorize the answer to. Sometimes they even quizzed you on it. I think there's like 400 questions in there. But the first one, on the very first page, question 1, the number one thing that you had to know about the Christian faith. In 1647, what is the chief aim of humanity? To glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Irenaeus, in his magisterial against the heretics in the year 185 AD, the glory of God as a human, fully alive. Jesus, before him, I have come that you may have life and to have it abundantly. And even before Jesus, King Solomon said in 950 BC, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and take satisfaction from their work. This too I see is from the hand of God. This very simple recipe available to all of us. And before him in the enthronement psalm, Psalm 2, happy are those who take refuge in Yahweh. And this is a key one. Last week we wrestled with the question, can we be happy while the USA is committing war crimes in Iran? And that's a space holder for any other bad circumstance. Can I be happy when the bad circumstances are happening to me, or when there's something totally morally offensive going on in the world? And the truth is, there is always something happening to me, and there's always something morally offensive going on in the world. If my plan for happiness was to wait until there was nothing bad happening to me and nothing bad happening in the world, then I would never arrive, right? What's great about Psalm 2 is all the other verses are about the nations raging in arrogance at each other. And they're all killing each other, and it's horrible, and they have terrible plots, and they're deceitful, and they're empty, and they're vicious. And then it closes, but happy are those who take refuge in Yahweh. That in the midst of total cataclysm, we can have a kind of happiness. There's a science behind that. It works like this. We often imagine happiness and unhappiness to be one spectrum, where you can be, if you're less happy, you become more unhappy. But the science is actually that it's two spectrums. So I could be maximally happy and maximally unhappy all at the same time. Part of our growth into mature adults is learning to feel two things at once. Confused me forever. But the sooner I pick up on the idea that I can be unhappy and happy at the same time, gosh, the closer I will be to this kind of shalom. See, the truth is, the unhappiness that we are trying to describe here, that is captured in the bulk of Psalm 2, it is always coming for you. There is no escaping that kind of unhappiness. We had a series last year called When It's Your Turn, and it's about entering the season of suffering. There's no way. There's no way. What that means for us is we get to be real grateful when we're not in the season of suffering. But because one day, inevitably, you will arrive in the season of suffering, it's good to increase this kind of Jesus happiness to the maximum that you can. That's what we're working on here. All the way to the beginning, okay? We started in 1995. We've worked all the way back to the beginning of time and material, the creation of the world. The Lord God made all of these trees to grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. This is a portrait of the world made of goodness and abundance. The first things that were true of the world was that it was good and there was an abundance to it. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to care for it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat of any tree in the garden. Beautiful trees, all of them, abundance, goodness. But you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, deciding things for yourself. For when you eat that, you will certainly die. Tim Mackey from the Bible Project said this, and I think this is the heart of the matter. It's challenging, I think maybe even controversial. This is what we're talking about today. Enjoy every tree except for one. Why? Every tree is so beautiful. And once the desire of that beauty is excited within you, it will impel you to move towards the good. So follow your desire and consume the good. That is the first commandment of the Bible. Follow your desire, consume the good. The good that you see out there is real. And when you find the good, enjoy it. And when I'm enjoying the good, what I am enjoying in a way is God. Because the 7-day narrative taught me that God is the knower and the provider and the definer of all that is good. So any physical object within creation, here with the trees, is actually a sign or symbol pointing to the ultimate source of good. So in a way, eating and enjoying the tree is a way to enjoy God. That's what God wanted from you with the good in the world. He wanted you to enjoy it. And that's what these two narratives in Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 next to each other are teaching me, because God is the provider of what is good. Good comes from God. Now, does this mean that we can do whatever we want? No. Do we need guidance? Of course we need some guidance. That's part of the moral puzzle of there being one bad tree that looks just as good as all the other good trees. We're going to need some guidance. That goes without saying. In the church of my youth, however, I heard more about how I was lost and in need of guidance than I did about the litany of passages that say I should enjoy my life because God gave me a good gift. At least sometimes we need the encouragement to hear, you have to enjoy your life. It is this beautiful gift that God gave to you. Will it take a lot of work? Yes. Will there be also horrible things that happen to you? Yes, of course. Will you need lots of guidance and wisdom from Jesus along the way? Yes, of course. But the primary mandate from God to you is to enjoy your life and grow towards shalom. There are good things in your life. God gave them to you. That's what we're talking about. So what is happiness and what is it not? Helpful stuff here, but we also talked about it last week, so I'll give you the headlines. It's not a feeling. A feeling chemically lasts in your brain for 90 seconds. Really helpful information. So if you are spiraling and skulking about something all day, the first 90 seconds you can't control, but after that, it's your choice to keep dwelling on it and reinvigorating, repinging the part of your brain that releases all those bad feelings. Conversely, if you choose to be grateful, then you can induce that 90 seconds over and over again of the good vibes. Very powerful stuff. But happiness is not a feeling. We shouldn't be looking for happiness as a destination. We should instead be looking for happiness. There are some people who are naturally happier than others. We hate them. I can't be the happiest person I've ever met, even if I try really hard, but I can be happier than I currently am, and that's good news. That's good news for you. Whatever your baseline profile of happiness is, you can grow in it. And what we're doing in this series is we're asking Jesus to be our teacher. What is one way, Jesus, that I could take a step towards shalom in your name? That's what we're doing together. Happiness is not something that happens to us. It's something that we practice. It's something that we practice. And so, again, with Jesus as our teacher, we're asking, how can you help us learn this practice, embed it into our lives? What about suffering? Oh, there's going to be lots of that. In fact, to be happy, you need meaning. And to have meaning, you need a certain amount of suffering. The stuff we're going to talk about here, the actual practice of happiness that is part of the way of following Jesus, requires an enormous amount of work. It's exhausting, but it's better than the alternative, to have your happy meter slowly depleting. So suffering is a part of it. In fact, even just getting happier is going to be a lot of work. You might even call that work suffering. Okay, we're working with the work of Arthur Brooks. He's a social scientist who wrote several books on this matter. We published like a summary of everything he ever wrote on our website. We're sending that out in the emails every week. Many of the inventories that help you decide, are you good at savoring and enjoying an experience? What is your happiness profile? Those things are also in the email. He said that happiness, there is really no such thing as it, but something that we might think of a durable, satisfying life has three components. If we were going to summarize all of the science, the psychology, the sociology, and the neuroscience, we could choose a lifestyle that is full of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. What is empowering about these is there are concrete things that you can do in each category. We'll talk about the first two today. What is enjoyment? Here he also has a helpful formula. Pleasure by itself, just getting the 90 seconds of good vibes, there's a million ways that we can do that, and most of them are fleeting, right? You can see your sports team win, or you can do cocaine. You can simulate it in a lot of ways, right? All of it is fleeting. This is a recipe for ongoing, durable sense of subjective well-being. Am I doing good in my life? This will tell you yes or no. His formula is an enjoyable experience, something pleasurable, combined with community and perspective. Pleasure, people, perspective. By perspective, he means gratitude. Did you savor it? Did you say, gosh, I appreciated having that experience with you? Last week, I told the story of going sea kayaking with my dad. We've got a lot of those stories, but one of the things that happened every single time is at some point one afternoon, we'd be canoeing or kayaking or hiking, and he would stop and say, oh man, this is great. Isn't this great? Normally, I'm sitting behind a desk working for a giant soulless corporation, but today I'm doing this with you. Isn't that great? That's what he would tell me from the back of the canoe. He was taking perspective with his people, and he was taking a pleasureful moment and turning it into something stronger, more durable, enjoyment. Now, this intersects real deeply with our faith. I once heard it said that if you were going to rewrite the Old Testament so that it was less culturally strange to us, what would pop out to us is that most of the Old Testament is the story of feasts, Sabbath, and gratitude. This is what we're supposed to get out of it. That all of the sacrifice and everything, most of them are designed to actually be feasts. There's a whole feast calendar. You're not allowed to skip it. Everyone in town had to come. Anybody who didn't have enough food, the rest of you are supposed to make it work. It's supposed to be a big, beautiful feast. Feasts are a core part of the Judeo-Christian life. We don't do that very much, except when we go to field work. But they don't have pizza anymore. It's the whole thing. Sabbath. The thing that God is angriest about in the Old Testament is that people ignored his idea of the Sabbath. Now, because we prioritize being busy and hard work as Americans, we tend to look down on Sabbath as something strange and maybe exhausting to be like, you just sit there for 24 hours? No, you don't just sit there for 24 hours. You're supposed to fill it with all the people and things that you love. What if you sat down with your family and made a list? For 24 hours, we're only going to do things that we as a family love. How amazing would that be? That's what the Sabbath is supposed to be like. And then the other 6 days a week, you're supposed to look back and say, gosh, I'm glad we serve a God that for 24 hours a week lets me do something amazing with my family. Pleasure, people, perspective. This could be the heart of our faith. This could be a lifestyle that together we choose. Now, this is an incredible book by Priya Parker where she analyzes why we are bad at doing those things. But the science here is that one of the most enduringly happy things that you can do is have people over to your house for dinner. Nothing delivers the brain chemistry goods as much as that does. And you could do that whenever you wanted. You could do that once a week if you chose to. It's your house, right? Why do we not do that? She argues in this book. Because it's hard. Because it's exhausting. You got to clean the house. You got to make the dinner. You got to call them and ask them if they have any dietary restrictions. It's really difficult. She shares how constantly, even though she is a scholar who gave a TED Talk on having people over for dinner, that she is always stressed out when the time actually comes. She's yelling at her kids. She's figuring it out. She's saying, should we get a cleaner? We can't afford that. Whole spiral. It takes work. To do the Jesus kind of shalom, it takes some work. It's a myth that we constantly believe in that it should be frictionless. Where did the idea come from that it should be easier than that? I don't know, Disney, TV, internet, Instagram. It's hard. You could choose a lifestyle of feast, Sabbath, and gratitude. You could have it every day. It will take a lot of work. But when you look back on it, you will have said, that was a good life. I took a step towards shalom. Jesus taught me how to manage the stress and connect with the people. With him as my companion and tutor, this felt increasingly possible. That's macronutrient number one, enjoyment. Okay, satisfaction is the second one. The formula is enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. And next week we'll talk about purpose. Next week we'll take a pit stop and sit with some reasonable criticisms of this way of thinking. One of them is, he misses out on the sense of purpose that you and I are designed for when we advocate for justice and inclusion and a lot of other good things. That is where some purpose in your life will inevitably come from. For now, though, let's talk about satisfaction. His formula is your haves, what you have, divided by what you want. Here, the brain science is really empowering to understand because there is a way in which our wants can and will be infinite if not properly managed. There's two ways to get good at this. We must reduce our wants, and we must increase the right kind of what we think we have. Why is that? Two things here. What neuroscientists call the homeostasis of the brain and what psychologists call the arrival fallacy. See, your brain has a baseline setting, and it's sort of like your happiness default. Now, you could increase that a little bit over time, but it's very stable. And chemically, your brain is designed to ensure that you mostly stay right there. So what happens is when your brain releases all the feel-good chemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, all those good things, after a while, it has another mechanism that goes around and vacuums all that stuff up. It's called the reuptake mechanism. Because if it released permanent chemicals into your brain, one good thing would happen to you and you would have been like, that's enough for me. That's all the good life I need. I'm done here. I think we're done. We could wrap it up. Your brain is designed to keep you hungry for more connection, more good experiences, more learning, all of the things that release all kinds of good things into your brain. More exercise. Your body is telling you over and over again, okay, we're back to baseline, go get some more good stuff. Now, the problem is we can hijack that, as I said, for example, with cocaine, by constantly releasing that stuff. But what happens when you have a really good experience, if you go to a great party or if you have a major life milestone, your brain will open up the vacuum portion and bring all of that out in the next 24 hours. And this is why people who win the gold medal almost always feel depressed in the season after life. Because they hit the biggest achievement that they ever could. And then their brain vacuumed it all back up and sent them to baseline because that's what it is designed to do. This puts you on what they call the treadmill, the hedonistic treadmill that I need to do more and more and more and more and more. And your brain adapts in such a way that if you keep releasing absurdly high amounts of these chemicals, that has the capacity to vacuum even more. There is no way to beat this mechanism, but we can understand it and make it work for us. And this is what they call the arrival fallacy. See, when we focus on the outcome of any of these things, once the event is over, then we'll fall off this neurochemical cliff where we feel like we have nothing left. We did it all. We were focused on the outcome instead of the process. What makes earning an Olympic gold medal powerful is the process, not the outcome. Because the next day, your brain returns to normal. One of my mentors in college, he was a pastor, and he had a PhD in astrophysics from Caltech. And he explained when he finished his PhD in his 20s that his parents had rented this really small car. So after the graduation, they drove to the restaurant, and he was like, I guess I'll walk because I don't fit in this 2-seat car. And so after he graduated with his PhD in astrophysics, he had to walk 3 blocks by himself. And he was praying, and he was like, why does this feel so empty? I have wanted this my entire life. But here, in this moment, after I did it, he was shocked. He had bought into what they call the arrival fallacy. The key is to sign up for another process. No destination will deliver the goods. But we can sign up for another journey. And he did. And that's how he became my pastor in college. Your brain's designed to reset back to basics. So you got to get on another journey. Here's how that works. We reduce our wants by knowing that anything I get that I wanted is not going to deliver the goods for me. And we know that we can increase the right kind of haves by what they call earned success. See, if you just win the lottery, it doesn't do any of this neurochemical stuff for you. But if you constantly sign up for earning something that is meaningful to you, you will always feel increasing satisfaction. And here's where this intersects real deeply with our faith. There was a time where I was taught that the primary message of following Jesus was that he died for my personal sins so I could escape and go to heaven. And along the way, someone disabused me of that notion because they asked me, well, isn't there something on the other side of being forgiven of your sins? In between being forgiven and going to heaven? Isn't that actually the main event of your life? And so I spent a lot of time wondering, what is supposed to happen between those two milestones? And what's supposed to happen between those two milestones is that you walk increasingly closer to your shepherd, Jesus. You were designed to be a vessel filled to the brim with the presence of the living God. Jesus' nearness to you, that's the good news. It turns out that this is actually the first way that Christians thought about it. Ancient Christians used to think of this as union with God, that Jesus was our pathway to union with God. In the 4th century, someone named Gregory of Nazianzus, was thinking about these two things. He actually thought about how he enjoyed the progress of his life more than the milestones, and he was reflecting on how he was made for that kind of progress. And he said, actually, because we are made to be vessels of the presence of the living God, and we are people who are destined to mostly want progress in our lives, he thought that is actually what heaven must be like. See, God will always be bigger than my capacity to contain his presence. I'm just a little container. And God is so infinite. And so our destiny, the journey from here on out, is becoming increasingly capable of bearing more and more of God's presence. The afterlife for us is not a destination. It is instead the experience of being infinitely stretched in our capacity to contain God's presence. Infinitely stretched in our capacity to commune with him. This is what Jesus is teaching you to do. You were made to grow in your capacity to contain the presence of God. This is your destiny. You were made for infinite growth in your capability of knowing God. And so we are always on the journey. The destination does not concern us. With Jesus as our teacher and our companion, we can simply ask, God, what is the next step in our life towards this kind of shalom? Let me pray for you. Jesus, thank you that you walk with us, that you hold our hands. God, when we find ourselves to be maximally happy, you are somehow there with us. And when we find ourselves to be maximally unhappy, you are somehow there with us, guiding us. So, Lord, who speaks, would you speak to each one of us? What is the one step in our journey here? God, we open up our hearts and our minds to you. Amen.